What's up, everyone? Pittsburgh White Schwartz back again with another deck tech. I know it's been a while, and on our quest to catch up, we are going to cover the sets that are meta relevant for English as we get up to current, and one of those that we missed is Frieren. 8 pants, 2 different ways to play it. Along for the ride with me today is Jason.
Hello.
Jason's covered both of these versions over on Strictly Broken, but I wanted to tap him, bring him in as we quickly go over these. They've been doing pretty well, been putting up results both in NA and EU since release. Both versions as well throughout top 8s and top 16s. But they're all based around these event packages. As we look at the list laid out here, lots of events. We're playing like 4 or 5 different ones. The main core is the torch and the salvage event that also draw drops, which synergizes with the Fern Brainstorm. That's like the core engine of the deck. And then you have the Fern combo, which will add back both those flight magic and magic to find lost accessories, which is the salvage, and then you're going to loop that pretty much over and over again. We're going to start out with the booster finisher version. I think when the set came out in JP, this is the way both you and me preferred to play the deck.
Yeah. Japan hopped on to T really fast, and they kind of latched onto that, but there was a few people that played this, and I still like it.
Yeah, I'm still a big fan. The finisher is a lot more modular as opposed to the other one. And you also get a little bit more space to play with more cards, and Frieren has a lot of really good cards that are fun to play. So if you're a fan of like the more utility and stuff like this, maybe booster is your bag. But to get into those cards, let's run them through really quick. A lot of them are pretty simple. The first being this Ricky. It is a pay 1, punch yourself, search for a level 1 or lower character from your deck, add it to your hand. But it's also an event swapper. Pay 1, ditch an event, grab a different event. Good for picking up your one of stock shuffle if you really need it, if you milled it into grave, because it's one of your only ways to decompress in the deck. But as a Ricky, we want to see our Ferns, we want to keep looping combos, just gonna slam a full 4 of this and move on. If you're trying to shave space to fit in some other fancy tech cards, you could shave this down to 3 without much of an issue. Also unique to Frieren, coming back with on play Ozisa, except this adds level 1 or higher cards. Not a big issue here with the winter close Frieren on the right, because we play so many events. So just having that on demand filter and deck speed from our first turn, if we want to, just like 3 of this Ozisa, just because it can't pick up additional level 0 plays. So filtering in the early game, you're not going to find another playable if you're still at 0. So only 3 instead of 4, but a really, really powerful card nonetheless, even when you're playing Torch.
This is definitely a card you can skim on a little bit if you didn't. I know some people really don't like this card. I like it a lot. I think it's really works really well with the fact that we play so many events and we want to see our event going into one a lot of the time for like color reasons or
sculpting.
Yeah, it's just it comes up so often, and it's literally just like free mill. The card is, I really like it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Just on play Ozisa in general, just the filter and deck speed being on a character as opposed to an event or something else.
Like 17-0.
Speaking of events, still we have the Fern Brainstorm, which is a self-tap salvage brainstorm. Check 4 for every climax salvage character, and it has an effect that activates up to 3 times per turn every time you play an event. Look at the top 2 cards from your deck and rearrange them. You can use this to draw drop into climaxes. You can use this on your opponent's turn if you torch, if you're forced to torch or something like that, to possibly set up a deeper cancel, which will quote unquote dig you a card deeper on the next card. That's a little bit of a strange scenario. Normally you don't want to torch when you have climaxes in your deck because you don't really know what's going on, but depending on the scenario, you have that option available to you. Having that top 2 rearrange is really, really powerful. Again, mostly with that draw drop off the 1/1 event, helping you loop into climaxes as you go. And then for, we're playing 8 pants and a bunch of events. Sometimes we just need characters. This Frieren here, the unnecessary spendings with the big funny skull there, very funny clip from the show. Just grab any character from your waiting room. So it's a climax ditch filter that also doubles as an event filter. This card is really, really strong. I'm a big fan of this consistency piece.
When you have all these events, especially some of the bricks that you'll end up playing, like at level 2 and 3 events, even level 1s when you're at
when you don't want to hit your deck, when you don't want to hit your deck
you can mulligan a little bit more aggressively for like the cards you want to see, and then sometimes just convert torches or the salvage event early when you don't want to use them into just draw salvages, which is really good for looping combo.
Yep, and to help you loop combo, 2 climax swaps, just because looping combo is the name of the game, and we have the extra space in the booster version to play it. It's also a level 0 bottom deck bomb, which is really nice. And we are still playing the Fern. This has an anti-marker of it effect that really makes Ainz an Overlord cry, because it chooses a stage position and all the markers in the marker area of that position are gone. So even though Ainz is hexproof on your turn, you can still select that position and all those markers go away. Whether or not Overlord continues to see play going forward post ban list is something to be still seen. It'll probably still see play, but we wanted to include it because this is a really powerful one of that can just like really just landslide that matchup in your favor. And in all the other matchups, Miku as well, losing events. It's also just a fine card in its own right. It's an on play and on death. Pay 1, ditch a character, check up to 3, which can help you find events, climaxes, and dig up to 6 cards on its own if you play over it. Has a lot of utility there for just being a one-of slot. So it's not dead. Yeah, it is. It's just the what's her name, the Bay. So that was seen playing Kanata. So especially for a deck that wants to slam climax all the time, not a bad card at all. Before we get into level 1 proper, the last level 0 is this Victory in Morning Frieren. It's a back row card. It is a climax support. When you trigger a climax, you can ditch a climax and salvage. But first, you look at the top of your deck, leave it there, put it on the bottom of your deck. So you scry top, and then you can tap it to give one of your characters 1,000 power. Nice with Fern, because Fern can get pretty big. It gives you a little bit extra offensive power. But when you combine it with this 1/0 Frieren, which on attack gives your entire front stage when you trigger a climax, you can pay 1, blind stock top card, and then draw and then discard. So if you combine these effects in the order where you scry first and then use this 1/0 Frieren's effect to pay out the pants that you've triggered, you can effectively never have dirty stock unless you become extremely unlucky. These two cards and a filter engine together make it so that your stock is pretty much always clean and you get maximum value off of your pants triggers, helping you filter them out or hold pants triggers for an additional turn. This Frieren also can get really big by just getting an extra 3k when you play either event as a backup, which means it can live into the next turn and then continue to filter. I cut you off there, Jason. Go ahead.
I was gonna say being defensive 7k is pretty, but yeah, I was gonna say it is really nice because I think in this version specifically, you care a lot more about your stock compared to playing with the TD combo, which we'll talk about for sure. But so having the more clean stock and that you don't have to get baited into spending ends up like being really relevant.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. The more important part for sure is the 1/0 Frieren versus the back
0/0
row
is
here.
definitely a cuttable card for some flex cards we'll talk about later.
Yeah, especially when you
it's
play
a really
TD
fun, it's a really comfy card though,
and you
for sure.
lose slots. But yeah, very comfy to play these two together. Fern is also a very comfy combo. It's very simple. If you have 2 or more other characters, plus 2k to sit at 6k. It's gonna be base 7k with the climax, but when you play the climax, she gains an extra 1,000 power as well. So she's gonna swing in at 8k, sit at 6, and on climax play, so long as you have 2 or more other characters, you're going to salvage either event from your waiting room. So either Torch or the 1/1 salvage event. Very powerful. The fact that she's 6k just will randomly live in some matchups your opponent will be unable to clear. This card sitting on the board, or honestly the 1/0 Frieren that we just looked at, either of those cards living, you really do start to run away with the game and compress really hard. Just the extra flex that you have to finagle your way into another pants if you didn't draw one or swap into it. Just having that 1 card flex from these cards being naturally pretty big when you either play an event or just sit big is a really big boon for the deck. Also, pants trigger just pretty good when you get play 8.
It's even nicer when you have 8 warehouses, so the chance you miss them is even lower, right?
Yeah, even lower.
You love warehouse.
Yeah, it's not as bad when there's 8. When there's only 4.
You also have odds on play.
Yeah, a lot more ways.
Torch. Yeah.
A lot more
Ideally,
ways.
you don't miss. The reason there was a lot of early Frieren that debated just playing raw 4 Torch and playing no salvage event, because obviously it's off color and it's a 1/1. Although the salvage is very relevant, the answer just ends up being your deck speed deck, and you're trying to go through your deck, and sometimes because you do that, if you hit a bad early deck state and you have to use your torches during your defense, you end up ripping through your deck during your opponent's turn. There's a real world where you don't have a second set of torches to salvage off a second Fern combo, so you end up really needing to kind of play at least 7 total of these events to just kind of have that consistency to always pick up at least 1 or 2 event every turn.
Yeah, unlike Christmas Cosme, I have never had to think about having enough events in my waiting room, almost ever.
I think I can count on one hand the amount of games I've missed.
Yeah, and it wasn't even an issue. It was like, oh, I'll play a 1/0 Frieren instead of another Fern. No big deal.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'll take my 1+.
Yeah, you have the auxiliary cards, unlike a Bang Dream, where your deck is literally Kasumi at level 1. You have the 1/0 Frieren. You have pretty good zeros in this that can just supplement board spaces like the Azusa and the CX salvage, Digiven salvage. So you never really feel too upset about it.
Yeah, for sure. So rounding out the level 1, the events that we just talked about, the Flight Magic is a Torch, so either either on your turn or your opponent's turn. You can look it up to 4, add a character, and then the 1/1 is you can choose to draw ditch. It is optional, and then afterwards you salvage. You must do it in that order. We are also playing one of this 1/1 2K backup, has a soul trigger. It mills the bottom X cards of your opponent's deck, where X is the number of adventure Magic characters you have. The reason we play this one, there are a couple other ones people like to play. There is a Frieren that bottom decks itself that is 25, and a couple other options for counters that you could play. There's also an anti-change counter. The reason we play this, or at least the main reason I think of this, is because our only decompression is a stock shuffle. This prevents our opponent from leaving a 1-card deck, which means stock shuffle would literally do next to nothing.
It's like a ghetto Fumio too.
Yeah, just anything.
And sometimes you just win against Macross, which is
it's a terrorist card against Macross.
Yeah, they especially so a lot of these. I don't think a lot of decks, especially in English, have 1/1 mill counters, and I could be wrong. At minimum, a lot of them don't play it. So being one of those decks that pick it up, you completely just like warp Macross's entire turn, because they need to resolve their cards. Because yours is level 1, if you go to level 1 first, and they see you pick up this card in any capacity, they're probably not fronting you. They might even just like triple side you because they can't afford, or they sandbag their turn and don't do their whole shenanigans.
Yeah, because their first turn is so weak.
They can't afford to do it.
Yeah, they can't afford
if you stop them on their
lose
first turn, that deck actually just propels into the Garb Camp.
Yeah, you can't do anything. It's hard enough to get there in the first place, and then the whole thing.
Yeah, you go down to like what, 2-hand when you slam combo, and all of a sudden your whole deck gets built, and you're like, yeah,
not fun. Moving into level 2s, pretty lean here. We are playing one of this 2/1 passing through the checkpoint Frieren. This card's really, really powerful. It is another one of these 2/1s that gives another character on your board 1,500 times the number of events in your waiting room. That's a lot of events. We've seen these before. They're really powerful because they clear 2 lanes, because this is also
never saw this in English.
Adachi. Yeah. There's the Rimi, and there's Origami and Dal. There's a couple of them.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, there's a couple of these.
The only one I ever think of is the
Prosika version is the one that we never got, which is the one that sits on board, which is a little better than this.
That one's terrifying.
Yeah, that one's terrifying because it's also just a 12/5 for no reason. This one's an Adachi, so you will lose 1 lane, but kill the character, put it to bottom deck, and then shove your Fern to like 15k and kill whatever.
18k, whatever. It's some giant number.
And if that's still not enough, we have the PR, the Frieren dozing off. Hopefully you can get this from your locals and they have a stack of them, because people are gouging for this on TCG Player, even though this card should. There's so much of it out there. Don't overpay for this. Someone got this from
your locals. Probably
do not overpay for this card. There are plenty. I literally went to Ohio, went to our locals. We have stacks of them. If we have them, other people also have them. Yeah, do not overpay for this. But it is a very nice tech card because it is in a similar vein, answers quote unquote 2 lanes, because you give a character on your board a soul, letting you possibly side, and then you can sack this to bounce a character on your opponent's board. So you get something off the board and then give one of your characters the ability to sidestep it in some way. I really like these sack bouncers. I think the plus soul sack ones are really good. I think the ones that salvage are busted. I'm a really big fan of these profiles, so it's really nice that Frieren has one.
Really good with especially with booster Frieren, I think, because you don't have a way to protect her like the TD one innately has.
Yeah, so the TD one has that innate hexproof.
This card potentially lets you side a level 1 and keep up your full soul, or maybe even level 2, and then also bounce a lane, so you get an open lane, so you basically can't be tap countered.
Yep.
You can still get money countered, of course, but that's like
you're on attack at least. But yeah. Last level 2 we have is the magic that turns sweet grapes into sour ones, which is a level down that also goes to stock. You mostly play this as a hand to stock. You are a deck manipulation deck. You are going to be brainstorming. You're going to be moving through your deck. You will find yourself in situations where you have that fatty brainstorm where you're going to possibly go overhand more often than other decks, because you're like ripping through your deck a lot. And the more you rip through your deck, the more you're fresh, the more of a chance you're in a weirder or more slanted deck state for that to happen. When that happens, or any time that you're about to go overhand past level 2, you just slam this down, maybe disrupt your opponent, maybe get something off their board, and gives you a little bit of extra stock to extend your plays. So mostly going to be a hand to stock extension, but a little bit of extra disruption, which is nice tacked onto it. And then we have the 3/1 stock shuffle, which also salvages, which is very, very nice. The fact that this is salvage a character and then stock shuffle, meaning that sculpting this in your hand doesn't hurt you, so long as you can pick up like a finisher. If you're like weighing between another finisher or this card, the fact that this card exchanges for a finisher takes a little bit of the sculpting edge off. So we're only going to play one, especially since we have Seria to switch into it if we need to.
Yeah, this is a really good card, really core card for both of the Frieren deck. You just need to have some sort of disruption because we have nothing. And like Carmen said, you pick it up really easily off Seria. You only really double combo in this deck very often, so
yeah,
you
double
don't
is
care
very
that
frequent.
like
Yeah.
six stock represent playing Seria, swapping, playing this, and then still playing down double combos if the combo costs no stock, which is nice because I think 6 stock is a pretty reasonable threshold most people should be playing to.
Yeah, it's pretty
and then
common.
still gives you the leeway. Even 5 stock, if you have the 2/0 event in your hand, is the same as 6 stock, right? It's like
yeah, because you get it back.
I do think the 2/0 event is also just a fantastic board breaker. This card contributes a lot to Frieren's ability to basically never care what its opponent is playing, and I think that's like a very big boon for a 1k1 deck that we can pretend like a lot of decks do. Like we can say 7 Deadly Sins doesn't care about its opponent's board, which is true to an extent because it's like compressing and just slamming combos, but in the end it still ends up having to give its opponent card if the opponent ends up presenting things
or
that are
worse,
than what
open lanes. The Frieren doesn't have to give many open
Frieren
lanes.
will win its lane.
Yeah,
it will open like at most 1 lane on a turn. You have 2 different AK 1/0s effectively because your the pan support should always be AK with CX as well. This card hits any 2 or 3 down. Most level 1 can't clear 8k on defense, so that's great. It can break their back row because it can hit anything. Versus Nino, you can stop them from plussing off the blue 1/1. It's a little late at 2, but like you're at 2, you're not stopping them from doing it anyway, so you might as well just get rid of the card. There's just a lot of use cases, I think, especially in English for this card, that gives Frieren an edge over other like 1k1 or like CX slam loop combo deck.
Yeah, the fact that it lets you be really agnostic for your matchups.
Yeah,
is
I did
really
not
nice.
like this card first. I grew to like this card because there was just so many situations where you play it and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I originally only had one, and the more I played the deck, I was like, I'm going overhand. I'm gonna throw in another one, and then I just started using it more. And
I'm see all the time. You'll sit there. I've had so many games where I sit there and I'm like, I just need to see the stupid 2/0 event, and we're gaming,
and we're good to go.
And you have your Azatha, and you play, and you're like, oh, it's so free.
Yeah, this card's definitely super good.
Yeah, big fan.
But rounding out this version is the booster finisher itself. It is a healer, which is very nice. Then on attack, as long as you have 3 or more events with magic in their name in your bin, you can choose one of the following effects. You can mill your opponent 12 and gain 1500 power. You can look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, only can choose one of them to put into the waiting room, and you have to put the rest back in any order. And then you can ditch 2 to burn 3. So you choose one of those effects and do it. The burn 3 is going to be the most common, followed by the Mocha, and then very, very occasionally the mill 12. However, do not discount the mill 12. I have won so many games with this deck with my opponent leaving me like a very small deck with lots of climax, and I say, let's just re-rack that real quick, just to give you a chance to get back into the game, which also being a healer, 3 lower impact quote-unquote effects mixed together. Never underestimate modularity in the same card, even if they're a little bit muted, especially the Mocha only getting to choose 1 card. I've been bit by that once, but it's usually not that big of a deal. But can be very powerful when you have 3 lanes of this. Having this kind of modularity can get you there a lot, or multiple lanes. It's usually 2. Just with the way the deck plays, you do use your stock to do impactful things.
Definitely get triple, but you're not doing triple burn 3, which I think is
triple
like
burn 3
the thing
isn't
you
gonna
have to
happen.
realize. It's usually going to be like Mocha 1 double burn 3, maybe a mill 12 double burn 3, really depending on their deck. I don't know about you. I've hit a lot of situations where your opponent always leaves you in that like 1 or 2 card deck with a climax in it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common. Yeah.
And when that happens, you're just like, oh, the Mocha 12, the Mocha is sick, right? Because you just get to mill it out, keep them a clean damage, and it's effectively a burn 3. You've cautiously burn 3'd your opponent with this card.
Yeah, because it's like they canceled because they removed it. Yeah.
So it's really nice. So you can almost like sometimes in those situations pretend like you triple combo because it basically is. And this card is it's a really nice option select. It's really fun to play with. Sometimes I think I overthink a little bit too much, and I'm always like, oh, do I burn 3? Do I just like refresh my opponent? But sometimes you also get those games where you can like double refresh your opponent.
Yeah,
and it feels really good.
Yeah,
you just mill 36 and you refresh them twice, and those are the games where you can look at your opponent sometimes where they're like at a high clock, like maybe they took a bunch of damage, they take a really greedy turn, try to game you from like 2, you don't die, you hit your combo, and you're like, it's nice having a card that can sometimes actually just say like checkmate and win the game. You don't get to do it often, but every time you do get to do it, you're just like, well, that was nice. That felt good.
Also, just being a healer and having this litany of effects means that if you do have to try to take another turn at 3, you have a lot of
100%.
good ways to like either edge your opponent out or, you know, do what you need to do because you're healing down, you're stabilizing.
Yeah, you're like 6-7 stock. You slam down double of this, just like Mocha, or maybe mill 12 your opponent. And you can like, if you need to, you can like pay 6, encore 2 of them, and then just do it again.
Yeah, because
like
they
real.
don't
It's like
require
it happens.
stock.
It really does. Yeah.
Especially because you're a deck manipulation deck that like just tries to keep itself in strong deck states pretty much all the time past your first refresh. That is like your goal as the Frieren player, is to maintain powerful deck states as often as possible. Obviously, all White Schwartz decks want to do that, but this deck with all of its deck manipulation more so. You can be in those situations where taking that extra turn at 3 or gambling on doing so is good. So the fact this is a healer kind of leans into that. Here's the whole... go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do wish the 1-1 event had been like the Pro Sekai, like stock charging ones, where maybe you can abuse because this deck doesn't compress. That is the biggest problem with Frieren, is you're not a compression deck. You're just a force yourself into good deck through like a good amount of deck beat and hitting a good second deck and like a quick pace and whatnot.
Yeah, you don't have the stock generation events like Pro Sekai or Card Captor, which can get really crazy in decks like this, but you have other tools that make you a strong deck for sure. So here's the deck all out again. The one thing that you might notice is we are super lean on red, and we play a level 1 red event. Some people aren't comfortable with that, but I assure you, after playing this deck a lot, in fact arguing with Jason about this a lot on the release of the set, I was playing some different cards, but you still can if you do not like the low lean about red event. The options you have that are the best are the Stark, which is a marker oversize. It also hits on events, which is nice because you play a bunch of them. So it's a Futaba that gets a level 3,500 on a level with you top check, and then you don't have to move it. That has some utility later on, as well as the Fern, which is just a reverse bomb, but she lets you Mocha yourself on play. She has that Mio effect, which can be very powerful as well. So if you are kind of skeeved out by the low red, you can toss a couple cards in here, make some cuts.
It's definitely a hard thing to kind of get over, I think. The answer ends up just being you're effectively playing 7 events because you acknowledge that you are going to clock and level a 1-1 event very early. Like a lot of the times, and I had to tell this to Carmen too, you just won't mulligan a 1-1 event. You'll hold it in your opening hand. Yeah, you
just clock it.
Clock it, and if you ever, which very, very often, you'll go to, you're not always going to go to 1-0 on your turn. You'll go to 1-1. You just take it, you just level it up, you put more blue in your clock, and you move on. Or if you hit another event, if you overflow a 1-1 event, same thing. Or if you're going to wait till 1, your first turn at 1, you're probably not playing one of these down anyway, so you would clock it. For your red, pick up another copy from grave, and now you're doing it from every other turn onwards, which is what you were expecting to do. It ends up just flowing pretty decently, but definitely the biggest thing is Stark offers you an oversize, like a plussing 0, which if you notice, Frieren doesn't have, we don't play 1.
Yeah, we don't play 1 otherwise.
You really play for like the 2 zeros at 0. You don't really play to try-field your opponent and just swing. You're playing the conservative, like, play a card.
Yeah, play 2 cards.
Yeah, Ricky, search, play the Fuka, or the Frieren Azusa, maybe play like a ditch event salvage, to grab a card you maybe milled. You play the very conservative 0, because you don't need it as much, because you're going to be trying to slam a climax every turn, so that 1 extra attack, that 1 extra stock ends up being made up in the disparity a lot of the time, and it just doesn't matter. So you'd rather play to make sure your early turns, which are like the most volatile, are just the best that they can.
The other big thing around the time, I was playing lists that weren't playing as much filtering as Frieren typically does, but the filtering that you have, like holding a red card in your mulligan to clock it, is an absolute non-issue for a deck like this. So going into the deck with that play pattern, that if you're open a red event, you're just going to hold it and clock it, is really no big deal.
You really have 5 cards that at 0 that can just throw extra copies out of your hand if you don't need them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's huge. It's like really comfy.
The other big way that you can take this deck is to obviously play the TD finisher, which is a last shot. You can ditch 2 to burn 4. That sounds expensive. However, there is a package that allows you to play the card for absolutely no stock, while also probably giving you back all of the hand that you were going to use to play it.
For one stock, you end up spending either like 1 stock to be hand neutral or 0 stock to be a ditch 1.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You also will likely draw your entire deck on the turn. You will deal a damage to yourself for sure, because you will draw your entire deck on your finisher turn. So let's get into the changes. Obviously the list here, if you look at it, look pretty similar. So we're going to go over the couple changes here. Most important is the actual finisher. It's also a pants, which is very good. On play, it checks 3, and the way that you play it off of the brainstorm for free also also plays from hand, so you're still going to get that effect. On attack, discard 2, as long as you have 2 or more other characters, burn 4, and then give any of your characters 2k. It does not have to be her. So you can get pretty big in a specific lane if you're trying to hit over something at endgame. And then the way that we are going to get this out for nothing is this 2-card package here from the TD. The first is this Himmel. So when this card it goes to waiting room, you put a card from your hand to your clock, search your deck for a character, and then as long as you have 2 or less cards in your memory, you grab a copy of this from your waiting room and put it into your memory. The way that is worded is important because that means that, you know, even if this card is like, you know, something weird happens or things like that, so long as that condition is filled, when it hits the waiting room, you can put the card in your hand to the clock, and then, yeah, you can overplay the card and just send that. It doesn't have, nothing weird has to happen. It doesn't have to get reversed, which does help you get it off if you have to resolve this later in the game.
Yeah, increases the consistency of card a lot. And it also, I think, worse players will hear this effect and they'll still side it, being like, oh, I'm not going to give you the search and the +1. Or like, I'm not going to give you the search and then the effect. And then you just like, okay, you overplay it. And
yeah, send it anyway.
+1 can't fix. It doesn't matter. So, or you can tackle it again. And like, all right.
Also, another way to like get us into our level 1 combos, set us up. So it's not the worst card to have to play eye counts of, because we do have to have it in memory for the next card, which is a 5-card draw Brainstormer. Honestly, fine in this deck, considering that we play a lot of events, can get us into events, things like that, play a ton. But more importantly, has this memory effect. So as long as we are level 3 or higher and we have the Himmel in our memory, we can choose the 3/2 finisher in our hand, put it in the stage position this card was in, and you send this card to memory as cost. And then it most importantly gives that Frieren hexproof. So if you can do this 3 times or 2 times, your board can't be tap countered. And then it's on attack. So like, you know, 2 of them is pretty much good enough for most metas. You're mostly worried about tap money counter.
So it puts the card to waiting room. No, you said it puts memory.
Oh no, yeah, this card goes to waiting room, not goes to memory. The Frieren has to be, or
it comes up.
The Himmel has to be in memory.
It has to be in memory. Yeah.
Because
you can like 1/1 event pick it up.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's even better that this card goes to waiting room because we can pick it back up and use it again. We don't have to slam like a full 4 to like get into more of it because it will go away. We can pick it back up and keep going.
Your back row sometimes also just be 2 of these, and you're just sitting there like,
just blowing up your deck every turn, drawing a billion cards.
This matters a lot because, like we were saying, this deck is very stock. Like this version, this is the deck that actively does not care about stock. Like it will always just play. It will actively play to put itself into the best deck state it can at the moment based on what's happening in the game. It can spend its stock out because your top end is so cheap. You know, this is triple burn 4 and a stock shuffle for as low as 1 stock. On average, I would say it's probably 3 stock because you're probably playing at least 1 Frieren down and then sacking for 2 of them, maybe 5 stock. Maybe you brainstormed in between or you play down 2 of the Frierens. But even then, like 3 to 5 stock for triple burn 4 and hexproof and a stock shuffle is just really cheap.
Yeah, pretty gross that you can get it for literally nothing. And again, like this card does not have to be standing to summon the Frieren from your hand, so you can brainstorm and then sack it. So like if you hit on the brainstorm and the Frieren comes down and checks 3, you drew a card, you checked 3, you spent quote unquote 2 cards to get on the board, you go hand neutral and you go -1, put 1 on the board, and then you only have to ditch 1 and these cards are replacing themselves. If this card was on your board, you know, all game plusing you even more so. So it's like the amount of leanness, like Jason said, you can spend all your stock. And speaking of spending stock, we're going to play 2 cards that play into that theme of being able to spend our stock. We're going to slot 1 of this early play that has a really crappy condition, 6 or more events in waiting room. Not that great. We do have more opportunities to use it than most because we are like tearing through our deck, stuff like that. So your opportunities to play it won't be that bad compared to some other decks that might have an early play with this condition. But at least, you know, 2 or more other characters gets 2k, and hand on core, you can ditch an event or climax for that hand on core. Not character. Unique, but good for this kind of deck.
It works okay.
Yeah, works good enough, but it's also a ditch heal 2 stock. Because the Frieren finisher does not heal, and we're not playing 4 of a healing finisher like before, having a heal option in a deck like this is nice, and we're not too worried about our stock. So tossing in a copy of this, even though the card is somewhat lackluster, is nice. But more importantly, when we have that extra stock and we're drawing out our whole deck, we can draw into the 2/4 Zoltrak event, although it's called Ordinary Offensive Magic here, when we have that extra stock to burn an extra 3 on our finishing turn. So ideally, perfect world, burn 3 main phase, 3 burn 4s, 3 attack, and a stock shuffle, all before that happens. So
yeah, I think this deck is pretty crazy in that I think this is probably, if we want to talk about about a Hail Mary deck, this is the deck that can win the game it doesn't deserve, even more than like 7 Deadly Sins can, because even in the game where you get blasted, you are like level 3 on like the 3rd turn of the game, this deck can combo.
Yeah,
like,
you can literally
you can
like,
very
full-on
reasonably
combo.
triple combo, slam your opponent for 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 6 4s, whatever, and just say, okay, are you ready to finish me now though? Like, you're putting them in the same spot, because there's a good chance on the backswing of 6 4s in like maybe their first deck, maybe fresh second deck, your opponent probably goes to high 2, low 3, and they
you probably equalize the game for sure. And
I've won multiple games like that where I just checked my opponent backwards and just said, okay, your turn, and then they can't clear. And if they can't clear my Frieren, there's a good chance I can combo again.
Dude, I've done that shit back when all I had was the TD and I didn't even have the full actual deck. I was just playing the 2 Frieren TDs slapped together, and I was doing that shit.
You can pay 3 encore of Frieren, maybe 1 lives, and then you clock draw. You
just keep going. Go again.
You just go. Also of note, we didn't put it on here, but there is the TD money counter that you can play. I know some people do like it. It's also a 2-3 money counter, 2-3 full board.
Yeah, 2-3 full board. But again, you got to remember when you're playing this, you're getting a lot of extra power. You got a lot of extra power, and
you are like 13k,
and you're hex proof though.
Yeah, 13k hex proof. This card, unlike the booster, which is where I would have preferred to play the money counter, because obviously you're healing, so the chances are you can do it more reasonably. This is the combo that will use the money counter the best, but also the worst, because you only really get the value when you're like low 3, which just won't happen every game, unfortunately. Especially because this deck is very prone to refreshing on turn combos, so you're probably like 3-1, maybe 2 at like the lowest.
Yeah,
maybe if you're really feeling it, like you hit 2-6, you clock yourself to 3-0. You have your hand set up. Maybe you end up just going like Frieren check 1, Frieren check 1, Frieren check 1. You just want to sit in that good deck. But those are the games where you probably didn't have money counter to begin with, because you probably didn't dig for a count. So you take what you get. If you want it though, you could cut the EP, you could cut burn event. There's always room.
There's always options.
Frieren is very flexible. You can do a lot, and you can move these cards around in a lot of ways that you could want to. Simple things like if you don't want to play the Fern check 3, you can cut that card. You can trim down on like the Ricky count. You could even go down to like 2 of the Himmel, because you only ever need to resolve 1. So you could usually just kind of pick it up and resolve it as like a neg 1, like a pseudo event.
Yeah, as long as you're comfortable with playing over it, you can absolutely cut that card to 2. Realistically, so long as you do not touch the cards at level 1, you can really play with a lot of stuff there. And that's what's that core is really, really powerful.
You could probably argue cutting the 1-0 Frieren. I do love that card a lot, and I think that card contributes to a lot of better feeling games, because sometimes this deck,
that card,
it's a waste deck, you will double or triple trigger, and this is the card that kind of makes it so you can at least like stomach when it happens. And it also fixes your hand for you, which comes up, because sometimes you have these like 3-2 Frierens and these bulky events at 2 and 3 like early, and you're like, I really don't need these right now, I just need more cards. Or you did trigger those pants and you want to pick up the pants, you get to ditch it, and you're just like filled with hand, and you have your next pants. You don't have 3 pants in your hand from being like, well, I might as well take the pants, it's a waste not to. It's just, I think this deck flows like really well.
Oh yeah, it's super smooth no matter how you decide to play it.
In some ways, I think the TD flows a bit better than the booster, even if I think the booster is a more fun deck overall. I would take the TD finisher to a competitive event probably 80% of the time between the 2.
Yeah, I'd probably take it. Just being hexproof and having the scam potential is like there's just really so much to what this deck does. Also, I think this deck uses the Sour Grape event a lot better than the booster does. Again, it's a ditch 1, so you can actually like dig for Sour Grape, potentially bait your opponent a little bit by just like hitting a card. Maybe they go from like a 3 to a 1 or a whatever, right? And you get better sides. You should always be going to 0s realistically, because their opponent's giving you sides, but people will do it, especially like standby decks. They might go into like a 2-2 or a 1-1, so they can hand encore it and have a body, and then you get free sides, which is like real. But in general, you just get to float that stock a bit more. That stock can end up pushing you into the burn event where maybe you couldn't before. Yeah,
that's kind of how I get a lot of time. It'll be like I have like 5 stock, I have infinite hand, I go like sack 1, brainstorm, play down my dudes and just like throw those to stock, and then just play a burn of it. So all right, we did it.
Yeah, I've definitely had that happen, like playing that TD finisher version.
It's good though. Frieren is fun. Frieren is really fun. The only problem with this set right now, and hopefully it can change if we get it, I would really like to see a reprint of Frieren get announced, because the set's so popular and I know a lot of people want it and they can't own it right now, because the 1-0 Frierens are the 1-0 Ferns are like $25.
Yeah, I think we could do with a reprint there. It's interesting interesting that it wasn't as distributed.
I hear a lot of people, my LGS included, would be more than happy to buy Frieren and buy more because people want it, and that's a set that will sell to, like, Frieren is so popular.
Yeah, it's one of the most popular anime.
Probably the most popular anime
year.
to come into English, right?
In a long time. In a long time.
Like, we say, Bochi's popular for sure, but not Frieren popular.
Yeah, Frieren's an unbelievably popular
Frieren misses like
IP.
#1 on Mal and all that stuff. Like, there are people that will just buy and the Frieren cards actually look kind of nice. Like, even the
they have a lot of either good screen caps like the event, like Magic to Create a Field of Flowers, or framed promotional art, which looks really good.
Like I think
the
the
booster
1-0s
finisher, or like the obviously the TD finisher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
and the
fans of the
like,
show will buy.
They're eye-catching double R's, right? Like the Fern actually looked pretty good on that. I think the Fern and the Frieren level 0s both look really good on the double R background.
Yeah.
The Fern level 1 is really pretty, especially if you, God forbid, you pull the SP. I think or the SP SCCs, they look really, really pretty. The foils in Frieren also look very nice.
All the foil events are very, very pretty.
They're very pretty.
I wish I had foil Flight Magics.
Me too. That was like the one card I remember
those.
in JP. I wanted to buy them, and I was like, oh no,
they were like
$9.
Yeah, they were not
I'm like,
cheap.
I'm not gonna do it. And then they went up to like $25-$30.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last thing.
Like,
when I looked on release, I went to Yute and they were $19.80, and then I checked again and they were like $29.80, and I was like, okay, I'll pass.
I'm priced out. In English, they're like 20.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's not too bad.
But yeah, Frieren's a super fun deck. I think being an agnostic deck control deck that you can play in two really different ways. One that's like a very modular, lower impact, but like teched and flexed out version of the list, or one that just can absolutely blow up its opponent on literally nothing, and you get to play that same really comfy, smooth core game loop from level 1 onwards is really, really nice, as well as just being like a really nice stable 1k1 deck, as opposed to some kind of board standby pile, which is all we see. I'm a big fan of event decks. I know Jason is too.
I love event decks.
Love events, love looping, love looping combo again.
Well, I do hate looping level 1 combo deck because I do like level 2 deck a lot. Like decks with like good early play. But
but
Frieren is just not one of those decks, and I love Frieren more than I like level 2 decks. Well, so that helps. Yeah, I do think this is a deck worth taking to event.
People have been doing it. It's been putting up
people
plenty
have been
of results on
YST. It has made me very happy to see, because I've been a pretty outspoken person about how well I think Frieren does, and on we've said it on our tier list that's on the Strictly channel, and we've said it I think on your retrospective as well.
Yeah, I think we both said it a lot.
I've been beating
Frieren's so good
it to death since it was in Japanese. I put on my JP tier list. I think I put Frieren higher than a lot of other people would, because I just value a very stable deck that can win and push out a finisher in a lot of situations.
Deck control in the hands of good
deck
players
control feels good.
will always do well.
Knowing like playing deck like Overlord, which even if I love Overlord to death, that deck sometimes it's just you're just stuck in a deck and you just have to shrug your shoulders and say.
That's why I gave up on Kanatamarine and similar decks.
Yeah, you
so
shrug and you say, this is just what it is. I'll play out the turn. Let's see where it goes. Frieren doesn't have to worry about. Frieren will be like, I don't like this deck. We're just gonna go.
Yeah.
Will my next deck be any better? I couldn't really tell you, but like I'd rather chance it in a new deck than play in this like 2-18 and say I'll just cancel twice. So yeah,
never having to do that with Frieren is really nice. But in the close here, gonna wrap up in terms of upcoming content here on this channel. Gonna try to get Blue Archive set reviews set up for next week. That set is coming out very soon. I believe it's coming out end of next week. But speaking of set reviews, by the time you see this, the Oshinoko set review over on the Strictly channel will be completed. You can check that out. I'll tell Jason here to bully Kevin into uploading it tomorrow morning. He could upload them the night of if he wanted to, but he just doesn't because he's too busy playing Lost Ark.
I think he forgot to upload. Oh man, what's the last Fairy Tale?
Fairy Tale was the last one with AG. That was a good one. I was watching that the whole way through.
AG was cool. He like you could tell how much he really liked Fairy Tale.
Yeah, so and if you're looking for set reviews that we missed, I know I made a post about it, but like I'm not gonna go back and do Dengeki Bunko. We don't have the time. We got to push forward here. There was that whole swath of me being out of the country, into me moving, into the holidays, into like BCS season. It was miserable, but we're back. If you want to go back and find sets that have come out and you want a set review for it, and we don't have it, go check the Strictly channel. Kevin's uploaded most of the old ones.
Him
yeah,
to push most of the old ones out,
keep trying to. Jason keeps reminding him we have to keep getting on on Kevin to release them, but
Oh,
they are out there.
Yeah. Are you doing P3?
Yeah, I believe so. Andy wants to come on for P3, so
Jeez,
trying to hook
Andy.
him. The return of Andy. He's too busy working at the bank, man. He's a big
That's fair.
bank,
That's
man.
better than a card shop.
Yeah, but yeah, that'll be the
want-
next thing on this channel will be Blue Archive. So keep an eye out for that. All right, and Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Bye bye.